If you're neurodivergent and you struggle with setting boundaries, then this video is for you. I'm Kath. I am late diagnosed with ADHD and autism. I'm a qualified life coach, a counsellor in training, and I am going to be talking to you today about boundaries, what boundaries are, why they're important, why neurodivergent people struggle with boundaries, how to set boundaries, and what challenges you may come across. What is a boundary? A personal boundary is almost like a rule that you set for other people that defines what you think is acceptable or unacceptable behaviour. It shows another person how you're willing to be treated. A physical example of a boundary would be like a fence around a garden. That fence shows that this is your property and no one else is welcome to enter unless you invite them in. Of course, you're always going to get the odd person who thinks that they can go over that fence, but most people are going to stick to that boundary. The same applies to personal boundaries. You will get some people who push back against them. Why are boundaries important? Boundaries keep us safe and they ensure that we have a quality of life that actually feels good for us. There are so many people walking around living their life struggling because they are unable to set boundaries with other people. It might be that another person's behaviour or actions towards you is causing you so much stress in your life, and that is something that can change if you set boundaries with that person. Why do neurodivergent people in particular struggle with boundaries? Well, our brains are wired differently. We see the world differently. So straight away there's those social differences that we may not pick up on in the same ways as a neurotypical person. There are things like masking, and we obviously want to fit in, so sometimes we might do things that we don't really want to do because we want to be seen to fit in, or we want to be liked by other people. There are so many different reasons why neurodivergent people struggle with boundaries. We often tend to be people pleasers. Not everyone, but a lot of us tend to be people pleasers, or we're just used to having to shrink ourselves because who we are as a person is very different to a neurotypical person. So that is why there are just so many different reasons why we struggle with boundaries. It seems to be quite a common occurrence though in people with ADHD and autism. There are 3 essential components to setting a healthy boundary. Number 1 is be clear about your boundary. Number 2 is be firm with your boundary. And number 3 is stick to your boundary. I'm going to talk in more detail now about each of those components. First of all, number 1, be clear about your boundary. If you're not clear about your boundary, how can that other person be clear about your boundary? If someone is treating you or speaking to you in a way that you don't like, and you're not clear with them about what it is you want them to stop, then how do they know what it is you want them to stop? Being clear about things actually might be really easy for a lot of us, because if you're like me, you want people to mean what they say and say what they mean, and you do the same. So instead of, like a lot of neurotypical people might kind of talk in circles and talk around the subject, a lot of us get straight to the point. So being clear about your boundaries is really important. For example, don't wear my clothes without asking. That's a clear boundary that is straight to the point. When we are clear about our boundaries, it gives the other person no excuse not to be clear about your boundary. If you said it in a clear and simple way, some people might question it, but they can't really question what you meant about that. If you've told them straight to the point, don't wear my clothes without asking, that's a clear boundary. Number 2 was being firm about your boundary. This is really important because if you come across a bit wishy-washy when stating your boundary, that person might not take you seriously. An example of a clear and firm boundary would be, don't touch me. If you don't state a boundary firmly, then the person might not take you as seriously. And if you come across as a bit wishy-washy, then they're not necessarily going to do what you want them to do. So an example of this would be, hey, I don't really like it when you do that. Can you not, I'd rather you not touch me. That isn't, although it implies that you don't want them to touch you, which they should respect, it isn't necessarily a clear and firm boundary. So that person may do that again. It is much better to be like, you can be polite about boundaries, of course, to say, don't touch me, please. I don't like it. That's a clear and firm boundary. So being firm is really important, and being firm doesn't have to be being rude. You can be firm and polite at the same time. Number 3 is stick to your boundary. This is really important because if you don't stick to this boundary, they're going to think that you're not serious if you set any other boundaries in the future. Not only if you don't stick to this boundary are they not going to take you seriously, but you don't get what you want out of the situation. You don't get that more peaceful life or that calmness that you're seeking from setting the boundary in the first place. So sticking to your boundary is really important. If somebody comes round to your house, for example, and let's just say they're always calling you a nickname that you don't like, or they're always calling you weird or something. If you say to them, don't call me weird, I don't like it. That's a clear and firm boundary. You've stated your boundary and technically they should stick to that. But you will always get people who push back against boundaries. You will always. And sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes they don't realise that they're doing it. And other times it is intentional. So if they've not stuck to that boundary, you've asked them not to call you weird, you've said it in a clear and firm way, and they've not stuck to that. You would then state your boundary again. I've just told you, don't call me weird, I don't like it. Again, firm, clear, straight to the point. You've stated it for a second time. If they then carried on and called you weird again, you could then introduce a consequence. And that consequence might be something like, I've asked you not to call me weird, you keep doing it. If you do it again, I'm going to ask you to leave. Clear, firm, straight to the point, and you've introduced a consequence. If at that point they do it again, you have to ask them to leave. Sorry, I'm not bossing you around, but if you're sticking to the boundary, what you said you were going to do, you need to ask them to leave, because that shows them that you mean what you say and you say what you mean, and your boundaries are strong and firm. So it wouldn't always get to that point. It wouldn't always keep on happening. But what I would say to yourself is, when you're setting a boundary, think to yourself, how many chances do you want to give that person? So, or not necessarily that person, but when you set a boundary, you might think, right, I'll give a person 2 chances, then I'll set a consequence. Or you might think, I'll give them 1 chance and then I'll set a consequence. It's really up to you. And if you have that kind of structure for your boundaries, then it's something you can just go to easily. And obviously, as neurodivergent people, we need structure. Even if we've got ADHD and we like spontaneity, we still need structure. So if you've got that little formula set out for each time you set a boundary, it's easier for you to stick to each stage of that boundary. What I would say is, people are human, and when someone has been used to you being a certain way for a certain amount of time, so for example, they might be used to you being a people pleaser, and this is no disrespect if you're a people pleaser. I was a people pleaser for most of my life. A lot of us are. A lot of neurodivergent and neurotypical people are, but if you've been a people pleaser and you've kind of put yourself last for all of this time, they're used to that. So when all of a sudden you set a boundary with them, they might feel a bit surprised about that. And they shouldn't be pushing against your boundary. They should respect it straight away. But it is kind of sometimes human nature to question things a little bit. So if it were me, I would probably give them maybe at least 2 chances and then set a consequence. But that's completely up to you. It's your choice. It's up to you how you say your boundary. For example, if you want to be polite or not. Now, in most situations, when I'm stating a boundary, I will be polite. It depends on the person, it depends on the situation, but if they've not given me a reason, I mean, it might be that they're doing something that's annoying or feeling stressful. In that case, if you don't feel like you should be polite in that situation, then don't. It's your choice. In general, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt and I will be polite when setting a boundary. But in a situation where you feel in danger or you feel like someone is really invading your personal space or touching you or something, you do not have to be polite. Just say, get off me, don't touch me, however you want to say it, depending on the situation you're in and depending on how you feel in that situation. If you feel unsafe or someone is really invading your personal space or your personal autonomy, then that is your choice how you say it. What I will say is, if you find yourself, if you're in general in an unsafe environment, for example, a domestic violence situation, then please be careful with setting boundaries, because if you're already in that situation, that person is likely much more manipulative than the average person. And obviously, if they're a violent person, then please talk to someone before setting any boundaries with that person. It might not be safe to do so in that situation. So I just wanted to kind of add that on. In general, setting boundaries can change your life. It has absolutely changed mine. It can be the difference between, if you're feeling completely exhausted from, if you're burnt out from, say you've been in work. So this happens to me on the days that I work. I absolutely love what I do, but it's a very emotionally draining job, because I work with people with substance and alcohol misuse. So I'm obviously hearing about a lot of trauma. I'm talking to people about things like that, and it's very, although I love it, I love helping people in that situation. I love helping people in general, but it can be very emotionally draining. And I'll come home from work and I'll feel completely wiped out. I go straight into procrastination mode. I don't want to feel like that, but it's making me realise that on those days when I'm working in that environment, I need to kind of free up time for myself afterwards. So it might be that if you're in a similar situation, just from working or from whatever it is you're doing in the day or whatever it is, and you're always saying yes to things after work that you don't really want to do, but you feel like you should do, then that might be where your boundaries come in, where you're like, I can't tonight. And it's up to you if you give an explanation for your boundaries as well. It depends on how much that, for example, if you feel like, if you really value that relationship with that person, you might want to give an explanation. I'm sorry, I can't come tonight because I'm feeling worn out from work. I'm too overwhelmed. You don't have to give an explanation. A boundary is a boundary. You can say, I'm sorry, I can't come, and that's fine. You choose, depending on the person and depending on the situation. If you feel like you want to give an explanation, if it makes it easy for you, do it. But I would advise still keep that explanation pretty short and straight to the point. Don't over-explain yourself. So there are my tips about setting boundaries. I really hope it's helpful for you, and I really hope it can help to bring you the quality of life that you deserve and that we especially need as neurodivergents. We need some peace. And if you're not in peace because of other people's actions and words towards you, the only person that can help ourselves is us. We have to set those boundaries in order to get that peace. It's a form of self-love, and it's a form of health. It's a form of health, because it's going to improve your mental health and therefore it's going to improve your physical health. So I hope this video has been helpful. If you found value in it, please like and subscribe. I've got loads of other videos, and I'm going to try and focus a lot more on videos like this towards helping helping neurodivergent people with like setting boundaries, self-love, things like that. Things I've worked on a lot for myself over the years. Thank you for watching. Bye.